There comes a time when we heed a certain call, when the world must come together as one. There are people dying.
Oh, when it's time to lend a hand to life, the greatest gift of all.
I would proceed with the following speaker. I now give the floor to His Excellency Augustine Kpehe Ngafuan, Minister for Foreign Affairs of Liberia, and I invite him to make a statement.
His Excellency Mr. Vok Jeremek, President of the 67th UN General Assembly, His Excellency Mr. Obiang Nguema Umbasogo, President of Equatorial Guinea, His Excellency Mr. Jean-Pierre Buyoya, AU High-Level Representative for Mali and the Sahel, distinguished heads of delegation, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. President, permit me at the outset to express unreserved thanks to you for convening this high-level thematic debate on the peaceful resolution of conflicts in Africa, which aims to reflect on the journey the continent has traveled since the formation of the Organization of African Unity and take stock of African efforts aimed at resolving conflicts on the continent through peaceful means. Conflicts have been a permanent fixture in human existence from the very beginning of mankind, and conflicts may continue to dog us into the foreseeable future, as long as this earth is peopled by individuals from different races, different cultures, different countries, different ethnicities and religions, different political ideologies, different tastes and idiosyncrasies. There is bound to be conflict. Thus, the key question is not whether conflict exists, rather the key question is how conflicts are managed or resolved. Proper management or peaceful resolution of conflicts may ultimately advance the cause of mankind, whereas non-peaceful resolution of conflicts may oftentimes lead to wanton loss of human lives, massive destruction of properties, and precipitous deterioration or reversal of economic conditions. If the same political, social, or economic ends can be achieved without the loss of life and property that often result when conflicts are not resolved peacefully, then mankind should feel morally bound to pursue the peaceful path to resolving conflicts instead of settling for the Pyrrhic victory that resolving conflicts through non-peaceful means brings. Excellencies, before 1960, the number of independent and sovereign states in Africa was minuscule. My country, Liberia, Africa's oldest republic, was one of them. The decade of the 60s witnessed a dramatic spike in the number of African countries that unshackled themselves from the excruciating chains of colonialism. The African liberation struggle was characterized by a mixed bag of strategies and tactics, some peaceful and some non-peaceful. By the time African leaders met in Addis Ababa in May 1963 to form the Organization of African Unity, the OAU, which has now morphed into the African Union, there were upwards of 30 independent African countries, all of which dangled the tantalizing and noble objective of lifting their newly liberated populations from the deep dungeons of poverty to the commanding heights of prosperity. However, when the hard and harsh reality of everyday life set in against a backdrop of ambitious plans and promises by the leaders of the newly independent states, especially at a time of hardening Cold War politics, many of the new African governments became increasingly shaky. As a consequence, a spate of military coups, political assassinations, civil wars, and other forms of violent conflicts became commonplace across the continent. In most instances, the army, instead of protecting the constitutional order, became the main culprits in disrupting constitutional order. As democracies gave way to autocracies, as nationalism gave way to tribalism and marginalization, as hope gave way to hopelessness, many African societies, regrettably, were put on the path of economic retrogression and locked in a vicious cycle of poverty. Excellencies, as violent conflicts spread their disruptive tentacles across the continent, Liberia, once considered a haven of peace and stability, was not spared. On April 12, 1980, an extremely violent coup d'etat led by 17 enlisted men of the armed forces of Liberia resulted in the gruesome assassination of President William R. Talbot, at the time the chairman of the OAU, and scores of government officials. The political, social, and economic consequences of the coup were very massive and occasioned intermittent episodes of political violence throughout the 1980s, which finally emptied into a full-blown civil war that began late 1989. For the most part of 14 years, Liberia knew no peace as one warring faction or the other jostled to hold sway over territory in order to establish their fiendish fiefdoms. During this period, Liberia was awash with small arms, and the country became the sanctuary of mercenaries and warmongers from across the region and the continent. In no time, the dark cloud of civil war that had begun in Liberia spread to neighboring Sierra Leone and Cote d'Ivoire and almost enveloped Guinea-Conakry. The Mano River Basin, comprising Liberia, Guinea, Cote d'Ivoire, and Sierra Leone, gained notoriety as one of the most dangerous regions on the earth, characterized by massacres, the cutting of limbs, and the illicit trade in minerals and other natural resources. The gruesome nature of the Liberian conflict outraged many in the international community and led to a series of conflict resolution efforts spearheaded by the Economic Community of West African States and strongly supported by the OAU, AU, and the United Nations. ECOWAS even deployed the peacekeeping force to Liberia, which eventually came under the umbrella of the UN. Countless peace talks under the aegis of ECOWAS, OAU, AU, and the UN aimed at bringing the conflict to a peaceful end took place in many cities across the globe. Thanks to the persistence and unwavering support of ECOWAS, the AU, and the UN, as well as major bilateral partners of Liberia, the Liberian civil conflict came to an end when all the political and military parties in the conflict finally signed a comprehensive peace accord in August 2003 in Accra, the Republic of Ghana. The Accra Peace Accord led to the deployment of more than 15,000 UN peacekeepers in Liberia, comprising military and police personnel. The accord also provided for an all-inclusive transitional government that oversaw peaceful, free, fair, and democratic elections that led to the election of the first female president on the continent of Africa, Her Excellency Mrs. Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. Mr. President, Excellencies, the year 2013 is significant to Liberia and friends of Liberia, as we will in August of this year be celebrating 10 years of uninterrupted peace in Liberia. During this period, Liberia has held 2 successful presidential and general elections, has transitioned from the epicenter of problems of West Africa to a respected contributor to the solution of problems of the region, the continent, and the world at large. After experiencing one of the worst collapses in world history, worst economic collapses in world history, the Liberian economy, though still sideload with teething challenges, is among the top 20 fastest growing economies in the world, as strategies and programs are being implemented to catapult the country to a middle-income status by 2030. Mr. President, today, we in Liberia are internally grateful to all the international organizations and other friends of Liberia who helped us to peacefully resolve our conflict and install a vibrant democracy. We commend the painstaking mediation efforts of ECOWAS, the AU, and the UN that were critical in transitioning our country from war to peace and economic recovery. We commend the UN Security Council, the Department of Peacekeeping Operations, the UN Peacebuilding Commission, and the UN Peacebuilding Fund, and the entire UN family for supporting the peacekeeping and peacebuilding efforts in Liberia and helping to build Liberia's capacity to deal with the security and other challenges that the drawdown of peacekeepers may pose. Our tragic and painful past has made us to learn the hard lesson that no matter how intractable our conflict may seem, it is better to talk than to resort to guns and bombs. We also take comfort in the positive developments that have occurred on our continent over the past few decades. The AU and many regional economic communities have adopted clear, stringent, and unequivocal protocols against the assumption of power through unconstitutional means and have instituted other mechanisms aimed at fostering peace and security and institutionalizing democracy and good governance across the continent. Noteworthy among these initiatives include the African Peace and Security Architecture, the new Partnership for African Development, NEPAD, and the African Peer Review Mechanism. The UN itself has taken many measures aimed at preventing, managing, and resolving conflicts, including sharpening the tools of mediation. These commendable strides have contributed immensely in changing the political and economic outlook of Africa. Today, unlike in the past, military coup, civil wars, political assassinations, autocratic rule, etc., are now the exception rather than the rule. Africa, once mired in economic stagnation, is one of the world's leading economic growth poles, a new frontier of opportunity and promise. In spite of the remarkable progress the continent has made, there are still worrying challenges and problem spots. Ethnic, religious, and sectarian conflicts involving non-state actors who resort to terroristic tactics still haunt some of our countries. Despite the existence of protocols that discountenance the unconstitutional takeover of power, Mali, Guinea-Bissau, and now Central African Republic have all witnessed the overthrow of governments through unconstitutional means. Additionally, the continent is still grappling with the problems of piracy, drug trafficking, transnational crimes, etc. Evidently, as we on the continent, supported by the UN, improve mechanisms for the peaceful resolution of conflicts, we need to realize that given the huge toll which violent conflicts exact on societies before they are resolved, conflict prevention rather than conflict resolution seems to be the most logical way forward. To do so, we must find the causal and catalyzing factors of the conflict and deal with them at the root. Firstly, we still need to continue to consolidate the culture of democracy and good governance in our countries. We need our electoral processes to be free, fair, transparent, and regular, so that our people can have faith in the ballot instead of the bullet. We need independent and credible judiciaries and legislatures. We need a free press and a vibrant civil society. We need to deepen the gains we have made in the area of economic governance. This means allocating our nation's resources to the nation's priorities and efficiently and effectively executing programs that will fully unleash the potentials of our economies and thereby transition many of our idle youth to the productive economy, away from the army of the unemployed, where they can easily be enlisted into violent conflicts and deviant behaviors. This is why Liberia fully subscribes to the 5 peace-building and state-building goals. Our government has put in place policies that facilitate the achievement of these goals and are benefiting from support of the Peace-Building Commission and our numerous bilateral partners. At the regional level, African countries need to promote peaceful coexistence and good neighborliness, recognizing that a threat to the peace in any one of our countries may endanger the peace of the continent. On the international level, there must be genuine commitment on the part of all to reducing the access to small arms and light weapons, the main instruments used in conflicts across Africa. In this light, Liberia applauds the recent agreement on an arms trade treaty, which aims to establish a strong international mechanism to control the trade in conventional weapons across the world. In conclusion, Mr. President, distinguished excellencies, dealing with the causal and catalyzing factors of conflict in Africa will ultimately mean ensuring that the world economic and political order is fair and transparent, that the people of Africa and their continent are not shortchanged by unfair rules of engagement in trade, investment, and global politics, and that Africa is considered a destination for mutually beneficial partnership and not only a destination for profit. Mr. President, again, I say thanks for this remarkable opportunity of participating in this debate. Thank you.
There comes a time when we
I think the
heed
Minister
a
of
certain call, when the world must come together as one. There are people dying.
Oh, when it's time to lend a hand to life, the greatest gift of all. We can't go on